Hello, guys. Hi, Dan. How's it going?
Good. I'm doing great.
So, yeah, it kind of feels like it's been a long time since we did our last webinar, and I think it's probably because of the holiday season. So, and I am very excited for today because, before you guys joined, I was speaking with Dan. He was sharing his vision with me, and I think it's going to be a very interesting session today. So I want to take some time to introduce Dan Fairbanks. So Dan has started over 7 companies, an e-commerce company, a running store company, an e-commerce marketplace, and point of sale software company. Is that right, Dan?
Yeah, amongst a few others. Yeah.
Yeah, and he said his vision was to fundamentally change how small businesses and retailers finance their inventory. And that's what he's going to be speaking about today. Let's get started.
All right. Well, thank you, Ravi, for that introduction. I'm going to switch over to a screen share.
Mm-hmm.
And let me get the right thing set up there. Here we go. Okay. Well, I'll take you back to when I had my running stores. So I remember I'm sitting in the back office of my running stores, or store, I guess at that point. I had two locations, but I was sitting in the back office of one of my running stores, and which I'd worked for 3 years, just worked really hard to build, working my butt off. And I remember this moment staring at my computer thinking, how am I going to pay these invoices? I opened my stores to spread the joy of running, not sit on unsellable inventory and debt. And then my manager walks in and tells me there's a customer who wants to know if we're carrying the latest New Balance model. I'm like, dang it, I forgot about futures orders. I know I want to carry everything, but I know I can't take that much inventory risk. So like, what do I say? How am I going to pay for new inventory? I just remember being so overwhelmed and discouraged. I knew there had to be a better way. So I tried lots of stuff, from exploring new payment terms to opening new distribution channels, finding new brands that maybe had a hit product. But because I was drowning in the day-to-day operations of my store, I could never really get these new programs off the ground. Plus, I didn't feel to this point that I'd really found the right solution yet. So in the short term, I just ended up doing what other small retailers do. I discounted the products to get rid of them and sell them to try to open up some more inventory and cash to buy inventory. But really, after trying so many things, I realized that even though like running is a hobby for me, helping people get their products into the hands of the right customers is really my passion. And so I closed my stores to pursue solving these problems full-time for all local and small retailers. And this really led me on a journey of research and discovery. So I talked to thousands of retailers and hundreds of brands over many years. I talked to big brands, I talked to small brands, I Googled and researched distribution maybe more than anybody I know. I talked to industry experts, including supply chain experts at Walmart, as well as many others across the country. And eventually I met my business partner, Tyler, and he had come from the brand side. So he was a brand who was selling into small retailers. And together with our combined experience for me in retail and Tyler with brands, I think about 20 years of combined experience, we took everything that we had tried that didn't work and we threw it out. And we took all this stuff that made sense, and together with our perspectives, we came up with a process that does work, a process that's great for the brand and great for the retailer. Now the retailers that work with us, instead of paying invoices, they won't pay for inventory until it sells. And instead of selling inventory, instead of unsellable inventory and debt, they'll have extra money to grow their business and brand. And instead of discounting to get customers to buy from them, they can focus on customer service and building community. And instead of feeling overwhelmed and discouraged like I did, They feel empowered and excited to go to work every day. I know my story is not unique. Maybe you're a specialty retailer like I was. Maybe you're an e-commerce seller, or both. Or maybe you're a brand. Maybe you're just the one worrying about how to pay for inventory. The good thing is that our solution is universal. And so in the next 20 minutes, I'm going to teach you how to get inventory without paying for it, and how to make yourself attractive to brands, and how to select a system that allows you to not pay for inventory. And before I dive into all of that content, I wanted to kind of explain really quickly what the system that we came up with looks like, because it'll help you understand the content a little bit better. So vendor managed inventory is something that's been around for actually a long time, and big retailers do this, like Walmart does this, Target does this, and grocery stores do this. Have you ever seen like the Pepsi guy or the Frito-Lay's guy stocking the shelves? That's a type of vendor managed inventory, but no one's ever taken this big concept and brought it down to the local retail level and made it accessible to retailers. But the way vendor managed inventory works is, in general, the brand allocates the inventory. So the brand's the one controlling and thinking about the inventory that should be at a specific retailer. They then push that to the retailer with a collaboration with the retailer, which can be set up many different ways. The retailer receives that into their inventory system in step 2. And then once the item sells, our retailer obviously took the money, but the brand gets paid their cut. And unlike, say, consignment, this happens automatically. So the brand just gets paid automatically. So that's what vendor managed inventory looks like. And so going to the major agenda here for the next 15 to 20 minutes, I'm going to talk about why you want to get inventory without paying for it. I know it seems pretty obvious, like, of course I want inventory without paying for it, but let's get into the details. What are the real big benefits? Why would brands want to give you inventory without paying for it? So I know some of you are thinking, this is probably too good to be true. Why would a brand want to do that? This doesn't make sense. But in reality, it does. I used to think that way too until I met my business partner, Tyler, who comes from the brand side. And then we went and talked to all these brands and we realized, oh, there is a strong incentive for them to do this if you set it up right. And then last but not least, how to get an inventory without paying for it, which there's several different ways to do that. All right, so first, why you want to get inventory without paying for it. First and foremost, you want to get inventory without paying for it because it frees up capital. And let me be clear, you don't get necessarily inventory without paying for it ever. You get inventory without paying for it until it sells. So say it's a $100 item and it costs $50 for you. You don't pay that $50 up front. Only once that item is sold for $100, then the brand gets their $50. But let's think about what this does for you as a retailer. Let's say you have $200,000 in inventory right now. And many retailers work on a bunch of different terms. It depends on the industry, but most of them have some sort of debt term. Sometimes there's no debt. You just have to pay it on a credit card. One way or the other, you're paying for that inventory. And usually you can't sell all that inventory before your payments come due. So maybe you have 30, like in the running industry, it was like 30 days, 45 days, 60 days, maybe 90 days. But even then, we can never sell all the inventory we bought within that time frame. And so there's so much inventory we just paid for. We just have money sitting in inventory. Let's say we were able to give you all that money back. It was $200,000. We said, here's $200,000 back in your pocket. Now, maybe there's some debt, so you pay off some of the debt. And now you have $100,000, $150,000 that you can do whatever you want with. What do you do with it? So that's the capital that gets freed up with a vendor managed inventory setup. And when you have that free capital, you can do a lot of different things. So you can do marketing, whether that's online marketing, digital marketing, local marketing. You can do advertising. So again, like social media ads, you can buy billboards. You can actually advertise to build your brand and drive in more customers and more traffic to your store. You can hire more employees. Usually most businesses can always use more employees for this, that, or the other thing. So maybe it's, if you're a brick and mortar store, maybe it's, a sales associate to work the floor. If you're e-commerce, maybe you need some more people to pack and ship. Maybe you need some more people on marketing. Maybe there's back office stuff that you're doing as the business owner or the manager that you could hire someone to take on some of that work to free you up to do more higher impactful things for your business. You could, again, if you have a brick and mortar store, you could expand the store, you could remodel the store, make it nicer, more attractive to customers, and you could open another location. And think about how easy it is to open a second location. Or if you're an e-commerce store, maybe you want to open an actual brick and mortar location. It's a lot easier when you know you don't have to pay for the inventory until it sells. I mean, that's one of the biggest limitations on opening another location, is like getting that much more inventory. And this reduces that risk considerably. And that's a really big deal. You can also invest that money into training. So training yourself as a business owner to be a better business owner, a better manager, a better boss, a better marketer, whatever it is you want to learn. And then as well as education and training for your staff, so they can be better salespeople, better customer service, that they can level up, grow with you. And especially when employees know that you're invested in their growth, they stick around a lot longer and you have less churn. So all this is really beneficial. The next big benefit to vendor managed inventory, not getting inventory, getting free inventory, if you will, is it frees up time. And because the way vendor managed inventory works, where the brand actually is the one doing a lot of the buying, they're managing inventory and keeping things in stock, and because then they're getting paid a lot easier and a lot more automatically, you don't have to be managing invoices. Then as a manager or business owner, it frees up your time. So with that time, I already put one up there, is you can train your staff, which I already talked about the benefits of training your staff, but you can do it yourself. So you get paid to someone to do it, or you could do it yourself. You can work on the business instead of in it. So you can maybe hire some of the right people to do some of maybe the back office things you're doing, which allows you to work more on the business. Maybe, again, that gives you the free time to open a second location, or think about ways to grow the business. Create community. One of the things about, small retailers, specialty retail, boutique retail, local retail, however you want to phrase it, is that really it's about that like local retailers are about community and expertise. And that's what people are attracted to with those kind of retailers. I mean, convenience of local, but also like they like the community aspect of it. And so really putting more effort into building that community goes a really long ways in being a great local retailer. And going along with that, really hosting more events, putting more effort into events. I know as a running store, like we would do runs, whether it was, we did a lot of trail runs, marathons, we go to events, that kind of stuff. You can recruit better employees. It's actually, it's a really tough climate right now to hire, and it takes time and effort to recruit really good employees. And so having the time to do that will help you find better employees. And last but not least, more free time means you could go on a vacation, which is actually really important for our health. I wouldn't discount that in any way. That's really important. Last but not least, and you can kind of see how all those things lead to increasing sales, but there's real specific other ways that it can increase sales. So first, it really, when you're not taking the inventory risk, you're not paying for the item till it sells, it means you can have more product in stock. More brands, more categories of products, more styles, more sizes, more accessories. And one way this might look, we're working with a bike shop who has never really done apparel particularly well. And they said to me, Dan, like, could I bring on, like, they had the space for apparel, but they're like, could we bring on a brand where like they select the apparel and they help manage a whole apparel section for us and make sure it looks good? Because they just didn't have the confidence to like do apparel really well in their bike shop. They're great with bikes and other bike accessories and service, but not apparel. I said, yeah, absolutely. We have several brands who are really interested in being able to put apparel into your store and would do it like this. And so that's an example of how this setup can allow you to expand the offering of your store in ways that you maybe aren't comfortable doing now. obviously we talked about, your free time allows you to work on your business, and you can work on creating a superior customer experience. And some things to consider are like, what are all the touch points you have with the customer, before they come into the store, as they walk in, during, after. Are you doing things like follow-up calls and text messages to follow up with customers who say maybe they spent a good deal of money or they bought something important, and you want to be able to say, hey, is that working for you? Is there anything else you need? That kind of stuff really creates loyalty with customers and creates more sales. All right. Next, why brands would give you inventory without paying for it. So I know some of you are thinking, yeah, why would brands give me inventory without paying for it? This doesn't still make sense to me. And let me help it make sense. So the biggest reason is to get into more doors. And by more doors, I mean more stores. It's just inside lingo. So the more retailers a brand has, the more sales they can get. So, especially small and up and coming brands, like that's a really big deal to them. But even big brands who have a really strong presence, they still usually want to get into more stores. They want to expand what they do. But those established brands also want to have more depth and breadth in the stores that they're in. So they're competing for space within a store, and they want that store to carry more of their product or more depth or more variety. Maybe they have a lot of different SKUs that retailer could carry, but they don't. They wish they did. And so it gets more products. The brands are incentivized because it gets more products in front of more customers in more ways. And so that's really important to them. And the reason this makes such a big difference is because retailers don't often buy more product because of financial constraints, especially small retailers. And big retailers are a different ballgame, but small retailers have financial constraints, and they don't want to take inventory risk because then they get stuck with the inventory and don't have a really good way of getting rid of it. And that's not really fair. The brand actually has much better resources for getting rid of inventory that's not selling well. They have blowout channels and overstock places they can send things, and so they're in much better position for that. So anyway, getting into more, that's their biggest incentive. So selling more product, getting into more doors, getting more products in front of more customers is really their goal. So that's this enhances that because of the retailer. It's removing the financial constraint of the retailers. The next main reason that brands love this is for transparency. So brands want to see where their products are in real time, and they want to know what's selling in real time. And when they know where their products are and they know what's selling in real time, that allows them to completely change the way they run their business. So for example, this allows them to make factory reorder decisions much earlier because they have the data to do it. And they don't have to ask for it. It's there. And that allows them to make different decisions. Eventually that could lead to something called flow manufacturing. When I talked to the Walmart executive, he's like, yeah, when we work with brands and we really get this process going right, they go from batch manufacturing, where they're doing big orders all at once, to flow manufacturing, which is more just in time and real time, which saves on warehouse space and definitely saves on wasted product, which is all a very good thing. And then last, brands really love this because they get a lot more control. So brands want to be able to control inventory at the individual retailers, to at least to some degree. And particularly when it comes to selection and stock, like restocking. And obviously it's a collaborative effort is the right way to really look at it. But when there's a lot of the resistance just comes down to, again, the financial constraints. So being able to allow the brand to say, hey, yeah, you can have more stuff in here. That goes a long ways, and they love having that level of control. Also, brands are very sensitive to when product is going out of stock or might be out of stock. And they get really frustrated when they're losing sales because something was out of stock when it could have been reordered, and it just didn't get reordered because the retailer was too busy doing other things to make sure that the item was reordered. And maybe it's one of the smaller brands for the retailers. So the retailer's like, yeah, not a big deal. We might have lost a few sales, but it's not a retail to us. But to that brand, it is a big deal. And so they're really incentivized to make sure that products stay in stock so they don't lose sales to preventable out of stock issues. And so that level of control goes a long ways. And then another benefit is that, say they're selling all over the country, all over the world, but say they're in one state, something is selling really well. Maybe it's because of the weather, in the summertime or the winter time, things are selling like that, or summer type items are selling better in the southern part of the country. But for some reason it was distributed a little bit more evenly. And so, but it's not selling in the north. And so then they can move product from one store to the other. And which is really a benefit to both retailers. The retailer, they're taking product away, then great, they don't have that in their stock, it wasn't selling anyway. They can make room for other things. And then the retailer that is selling it, now they don't have to be out of stock. They can just get that stock pulled from another retailer. And it creates a lot of efficiency in the system. All right. So lastly, I wanted to talk about how to get inventory without paying for it, which is, I'm sure, what you're all wondering. So first is how to do it on your own. Really, to do it on your own, it's going to look a lot more like consignment. But the real incentive here is to think like, instead of just taking the brand's terms at face value, you say, hey, brand, you go to maybe one of the brands that you already have. You say, hey, would you be willing to sell under consignment like terms? If you did that, I will give you more product, or I will take on more products, and I will, and maybe more variety of products, and I'll make sure you get paid quickly once the items sell. So you do have to come up with some sort of way of tracking that. You could use other consignment software. You could just use your own reporting and send over payments. And that's how you can do it on your own. And brands actually are pretty open to this. I mean, it depends on the brand. It depends on the financial situation of how it's being financed currently. But if you're willing to take on more products, they're under these kinds of terms, they're often open to it. Another way to do it is to find a newer or smaller or just some alternative brand with a suitable substitute product to whatever you're selling, and ask them, if you were to switch to them, would they be willing to do it under consignment-like terms? And again, explain to them that you're going to try to do it a little bit better than typical consignment. You're going to give them some good reports, and you're going to help make sure they get paid quicker. And that way, they're incentivized to want to do this with you. That's what makes you attractive to these brands to want to work with you. Is you want to sell their products, and you're going to help facilitate, if not some sort of mix between manual and technology, vendor managed inventory type setup. So how do you do it though without doing it in that consignment type way? So you need a vendor managed inventory system. And what you want that system to do is it allows the brands to allocate inventory to the retailer. It allows brands to have visibility of inventory and sales at the retailer. Again, just all automatically, nice UI and dashboard. It automatically pays the brand when an item sells. You don't want to have to be dealing with tracking sales and invoices. You just want to report in the end that says, here's what was sold, here's the payments that went out, everything matches up. And then you want it to allow the retailer to manage the inventory relationship with the brand. So having certain controls. For example, you want give the retailer the ability to set maximums for a brand, whether it's the whole brand, or maybe it's a category of that brand, or a specific product, or a specific SKU. You can kind of set the parameters of hey, brand, this is how much of this product we want in our store. And so I don't want you to send any more than this maximum. And then again, it can having controls to either automatically approve inventory allocations from a brand. So if you really trust your brand, you're look, you're good. You can do whatever you want. I trust that you're going to try to maximize, both of our profits. You're not going to stick me with too much stuff that I can't sell, because their incentive, they don't want to give you stuff they can't sell anyway, that you can't sell anyway, because then that inventory is just sitting dead to them too, and they'd rather put it somewhere else. So a lot of it can be trusted. Maybe you don't trust them. Maybe you just have a lot of controls. Maybe you, if you just gave that access to too many brands and they're not seeing the big picture, you're look, I just want to have some manual control. There's nothing wrong with that either. And so you want to have the ability to approve the inventory from the brand before they ship it. So maybe the brand says, here's what we want to send to you, we'll ship it to you. And by the way, a good inventory management system doesn't necessarily have to replace any type of way things had been done. If you still want to do orders, you could also order from the brand in a traditional way and do more of a pull system, just like you're doing now. But vendor managed inventory allows the brand to do more of a push system, which is what changes a lot of the really cool dynamic of how this all works and why they would want to do it. Again, I wanted to just show this visual of how vendor managed inventory works. Again, the brand allocates the inventory from their side, from their system. They push that onto the retailer who, again, if they have the controls, they accept it. Maybe it's automatically accepted. Maybe it hits certain limits. It then gets put into their inventory in their system, like they receive it. They can see it first before it gets sent, and then they see it, they receive it. It's in their inventory, they sell it in step 3, and it automatically, you collected the money, and then the brand gets paid the cost of the item automatically. And I'm going to bring up one last incentive there for the brand. They actually start getting paid sooner under this model. So as soon as anything starts selling, they start collecting money. And so in the average, they still might get paid about on average, over time as much as they were before. But because they start collecting money sooner, that actually helps their cash flow. So that's one of their incentives. All right. So now I'm going to talk about how to choose a vendor managed inventory system. So first, we want to make sure the commission for a sale comes from the brand side of the margin. So in a good vendor managed inventory system, let's say that an item is $100. And typically, like right now, you're paying, it's Keystone margin. So you're paying $50 for that item. You don't want a system that like suddenly charges you, the retailer, more just because you're doing it under vendor managed inventory. You want the commission of the sale to come, and by the commission, I mean the commission that the vendor managed inventory system takes from the brand side. So that way your margins are unaffected. You want to make sure that the payments are fully automated. You don't have to deal with, it's just all these payments all the time. Like they're wanting to get paid in, pretty much real time. And so that would be crazy to have to manage. You want that to be automated, and then you want it to give you a really good report so that you know that everything actually happened the way that it was supposed to. You didn't overpay. And you want to choose one with a marketplace of brands that you actually want to sell in your store. So it's really important that you choose a vendor managed inventory system that has brands on it that will work with you and do this with you. Obviously, so that's what's really important. All right, so what now? One of the most common questions I get is, Dan, can you help me get inventory without paying for it? The answer is yes. And the best part is that it's free to join the free inventory club. That's what I call it. So just go to thatch.tech/waitlist and add your store to our waitlist. And whether you sell in-store, online, or both, this is for you. So picture a day when your ability to stock your store is no longer dependent on your bank account. Picture a day when a new customer walks up to your register and says, I wish I could buy everything in the store. Picture a day when your business is thriving and you can work when you want to work, travel when you want to travel, and enjoy your passions without limits. All right, questions. I'm going to go back to this just so it's up there, but let's move on to questions.
So I'll shoot the first one, Dan. So you spoke a bit about flow manufacturing, right?
Yeah.
Can you elaborate a bit on that?
Sure. So, and it's not my expertise. I was meeting with someone who works at Walmart, and they were explaining it to me. And so I'm going to do my best to like explain what I understand, but it's not like I'm not an expert in flow manufacturing. So let me contrast it to how most manufacturing is done right now, which is batch manufacturing. So batch manufacturing is, I want 10,000 units of this product, and you tell the factory, maybe the factory's in China or somewhere, wherever it is. You say, I want 10,000 units of this product, and you order it all in one batch, and they get it all, the tooling all figured out, and they make them all over the course of a couple of weeks or months, and then they start shipping them over. And in order to do that, you have to basically make a big guess. You're like, okay, so I'm going to guess that I need 10,000 units 6 months from now, and then I can finally start selling them. And then I'm going to sell them over 6 months from there. I'm going to distribute them, slowly over time. So I got to warehouse them or get them out there to different retailers and hopefully sell them. And then I got to predict that again and put in another batch order, right? So that's batch. So you have these periods of time. You put in a big order and then you have a big gap and then you sell it and then you try to sell it and you got it. So you're kind of way behind. You have like this 3 to 6 to 9 month, 1 year, like depending on what you're manufacturing, where you're like kind of trying to predict the future, right? When you do batch manufacturing. So flow manufacturing moves it way to real time. So instead of ordering 2,000 units at a time, you order 500 or 1,000, or 100 maybe even. And so what you're doing is like, all right, so you're ordering maybe, let's say 500 at a time instead of 10,000. And it's usually more, like I'll admit, it's usually more expensive to only order 500 at a time. Like your per unit cost might go up. But because you're paying attention to the like real-time sales, you're going, this is what's selling, this is the velocity of what's selling, and you can get that product from manufacturing into the hands of customers within, say, weeks instead of months. You can make those adjustments really, really quickly. And that it gets rid of a lot of waste, which is where the cost, so it might seem to cost more per unit, but what it allows you to do is either ramp down quicker so that you don't have wasted product. It allows you to get rid of warehousing space, which costs money too. So you might actually just save money, even if it was this, like nothing changed, you sold the same amount of stuff, you didn't have to warehouse as much of it. And so you save money there. And then it allows you to not miss demand. If demand goes up, then you can ramp up manufacturing quicker. As long as you have there is capacity there, but you can ramp up manufacturing quicker and you can ramp it back down quicker depending on supply and demand, more real time within weeks or days instead of 6 months, right? So that's what flow manufacturing, that's what I understand it. That's how flow manufacturing works and that's a big deal to a brand. If they can get to that point, like that's a big deal to them.
I would say you did a really good job at explaining what flow manufacturing, at least to me. So,
yeah.
So the other question that I had, so what about the people that manufacture their own? So I'm pretty sure we have a bunch of people who manufacture their own t-shirts, pants, and whatnot. So
that's a great question. So say you're a direct-to-consumer brand, right? That's what you're talking about. So you make your own stuff. So we're working on making Thatch. Well, there's 2 things you can do with it. For one, you could use it to get into other retailers. So if you're only doing direct-to-consumer, like that's great, but it has a limit. Any brand who does direct-to-consumer e-commerce eventually to grow needs to get into other stores, or at least open brick and mortar, and open their own brick and mortar stores. And so this is one just simple way to get into more retailers, into more stores. So I pitched this kind of from the retail side because that's my background and my business partner is more the brand side. But if you're a brand selling direct to consumer, like this is just a great way to get more product into more retailers. So that's first and foremost, that's the big deal. The other opportunity is we're actually trying to make it agnostic enough of a service that you can actually use this with your factory. So if you don't own the factory, you go to the factory and say, hey, let's do vendor managed inventory with you. So you go to the factory and say, hey, why don't I'll pay you once I get paid for the product. And so you create this relationship so that the money flows all the way back to them really quickly. And so then you're allowed, so for you as a brand, it opens up your capital so that you can spend more capital on marketing and other things. And you work out a deal with the factory to pay them once the product sells to me. And you might have pre-sold it for all I know, or maybe you're doing vendor managed inventory with the customer. And literally, if you have it all the way through the entire system, it's like, all right, when it sells to the customer, then the brand gets sold, and then the brand gets paid, and the factory gets paid. Just all, one right after the other, right? And so everyone's kind of joining in and taking in the risk and in the reward, you know, and in the true value of like, do people really want this product? Are they buying it? Some factories might not want to take that risk, and that's a whole nother set of questions to get into on another time maybe. But yeah, we've definitely thought a lot about that.
So have you been at a point where the brand has said no to you?
I've had one brand say no, and they were just I don't know if they were just misunderstanding. I feel like they just kind of were really dismissive and didn't quite understand what we're talking about. But I've talked to brands, you know, the Cotopaxi, Specialized Bicycles. Like we've talked to so many brands. So those are big as well. And like they have their own concerns, but they're all willing to do it. And then any small to medium-sized brands usually like just jumping at it. Like they just like, yeah, absolutely. Like this would be fantastic. It's mostly the legacy brands are just kind of like wrapping their head around like a new model. They're like, okay, hold on. Like I got to rethink how like my whole business might work. And so it just kind of, for them, it's a matter of making sure that it really, like the whole process is really dialed in and flows well. So they may not be early adopters, but they're interested in doing it because of all the advantages I laid out.
Right. And are there other challenges to it? You know, both from the brand's perspective as well as from the retailer's perspective.
Sorry, what was the question again?
I mean, like, are there other challenges there, you know, either to the brands or to the retailers when it comes to vendor managed inventory?
Are there challenges? I mean, on our side, they're all technical challenges, right? We're just getting all these systems to work and talk to each other and making sure we have control of the money flow correctly. Those are all technical challenges that we've worked on to solve. But honestly, it actually removes a lot of the challenges. I mean, that's kind of the point of this was I was a retailer sitting around thinking like, what are my biggest pain points? What am I struggling with? And then I was sitting there and we mentioned Zion. So spelled with an X for those. Zion.store is the website. You go there, it's an e-commerce marketplace. And we have a point of sale as well. And we used to have all these customers. I mean, I'm always listening to customers. So I knew my own pains and I'm sitting there listening to all these retailers and talking to hundreds of them, thousands of them. And I'm going, you know, what keeps them awake at night? What really stresses them out? And money is really the biggest one, money and people. And so I would sit and think about how to solve those problems. And vendor managed inventory is just a huge burden lifted off the shoulders of a retailer to remove that financial stress. And then for a brand, particularly any like probably in the early stages of this, because this is something that's not launched, to be clear. We have a lot of customers who are signed up, want to do it, ready to do it. We're working on we're doing manual ways of doing this right now. And so, but like I said, we've talked to brands who are well established as well as up and coming. But the up and coming brands are the ones that are most excited and want to really get in this, get on it, get into more stores. The terms make perfect sense to them. And I think they're going to be at a huge advantage. And eventually that'll put upward pressure on the bigger brands to be like, wait, we're losing market share to these smaller brands who have better terms. So we better change our terms too, right? So that's what I expect to have happen because of this. So no, in reality, to the brand and retailer, it really removes a lot of the biggest challenges. I mean, and I brought up some of the others. I mean, you still have to kind of communicate between the brand and the retailer, like controls, so that the retailer is comfortable with the brand and the way they do the inventory. And you could still do, I mean, you could do a pull system as a retailer and be like, I want to pick everything that comes into the store, but I don't want to pay for it until it sells. You could set that agreement with the brand as well. And then they don't really have the control, although they might, maybe that might be a reason if they don't want to work with you. But it might not be a deal breaker for them either. So, yeah, I mean, so to me, those are some of the challenges, is just figuring out the way that all right, we have the new terms, a new setup, and it's making sure that the collaboration between the brand and the retailer is working right for both. I think that's the biggest challenge.
Got it. So guys, feel free to drop your questions. I'm pretty sure Dan has like a few minutes to answer those. It looks like we aren't getting a lot of questions. So should we wait for a few more minutes, Dan, to see if some question pops up?
Yeah, sure.
Mm-hmm. So how did you get into VMI?
I mean, like I said, because I was a retailer and then I was working on Zion and talking to all these retailers. It was an idea I had had forever ago on the retail side, but I honestly didn't know if the brands would go for it.
Mm-hmm.
I just kind of tabled the idea. And then when I met Tyler, my business partner, and he had been a brand who sold into retailers. And he actually brought up the idea to me. And I was like, I've had this idea before. And we really just started, like, the synergy just really happened. And I was like, oh my gosh, I didn't realize the like big advantages it had to the brand. Like when they have, the money coming in, right when an item sells, so they don't have to try to collect, because that's one of the biggest reasons that they don't like doing consignment. They don't have to try to like figure out how to collect that money. When they have that level of transparency, they can see the product, they can control it, they can, make sure things are in stock. Like when you give them those advantages, it's a big deal. And so like really him and I coming together, it just kind of sparked this like, oh my gosh, like this would work. And then we went out and started talking to every retailer brand we could. And they were like, yep, absolutely, we're in.
So,
and we knew we had to make it. So like at that point, it was like, oh man, this just has to exist. Like,
mm-hmm. So, just quickly checking the chat. So we don't have any questions, surprisingly. So let's wrap it up. If if you are done, Dan.
Yeah. Just to wrap things up, I'm really excited. I think this is a fundamental shift in retail. It's a technology shift on how retailers and brands interact. It can even, again, from the brand to manufacturing, it shifts this relationship. It shifts the financing. It actually like lowers the financial burden on the whole system. Mm-hmm. Which in the end, like one of my visions is to create a world where shopping local and small retailers or boutique and e-commerce like is a remarkable experience. And this is one key aspect in making that happen. And so, this will be a big shift in retail, and it's just the beginning. So if you want to be a part of it, you want to get on our wait list, go to thatch.tech and get on our wait list, and we'll we can set up a time to talk more as well if you have other questions to follow up with me. Mm-hmm. Yeah.
All right.
That's it. Grateful to be here. Thanks for having me.
Yeah. It was a pleasure having you here speak today, Dan. So, and thank you so much, guys, for staying until the very end. So, and also happy holidays for those celebrating. I hope you guys have a wonderful holiday season and a great new year. I'll see you in a different webinar. Bye-bye.
All right. Bye-bye.